Business. I'm your host, Charlene Mitchell, and this is a hot show tonight. Really hot show because it's a topic that tends to get people a little hot around the collar. We're talking about racism, racial profiling, the immigration, the separating of children, the stuff that's going on right now. I mean, there are just so many things. It's like, where do you start? Michael Imhotep, who is he's a talk show host here on 910.
Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m., the African History Network show.
And he has a huge following on social media.
Yes.
And Sturge Moreland is a community activist and businessman. And he's never one to bite his tongue about what's happening out here in these streets. And we have on the line Bruce. He's one of our callers. And Bruce, thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, Charlene, Serge, and Mike.
Yes.
Great conversation. And like Mike always puts a historical spin on it, it is true. Look, the concept of race was created by rich white Europeans and American elite who basically raped and pillaged their way up the economic chain. Now the good old boys are sitting back with their arms folded, attempting to live some wholesome lifestyle as if honor and fair play is the soup of the day. Years ago, it was the Indians, the blacks, and Asians. Now it's the Middle Easterners and Mexicans. White people continue to deny power, property, and status to non-white groups, and the Americans are also accustomed of being a part of the privileged majority that they rarely even think about it. I think black people can impact white people to a great degree by working internally instead of working inside out. We work outside in. We're still trying to win them over like the guy that's in steady pursuit of the girl that doesn't want to be bothered. Can't you take
I like that analogy.
Right.
So I think that what we need to do too is develop a black think tank like the NAACP, not like them, but something that's nationwide.
No, not something like them. No, like they used to be, maybe.
They're a nationwide organization.
Sure.
Urban centers should have one, and we should have one agenda. Black people, to me, in my estimation, haven't suffered enough because we can't even get on one page to save our lives. So we need to have a black urban agenda that spreads across the whole urban centers, and we should take bus loads like the Million Man March to D.C. because every time I see a young black kid getting gunned down for no reason, it hurts me.
Right.
So I don't know how other black people feel about it, but it hurts me, it disappoints me, and it makes me feel powerless.
Right, right.
I think the only way that we'll realize that they really don't like us is probably putting us back in bondage. What does it take? So I think that until
with the prisons, I mean, we are in bondage.
Oh, we are. We self-check like in basketball. Until we take control of our lives and start teaching our babies, that's one way we can impact them directly and socially and economically. You can't go to your oppressor to be your savior. It's like a dog chasing his tail. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. Right,
so,
right.
I don't know really what it's going to take for us to wake up.
Okay, well, people are waking up right now. People are waking up right now. People are fighting back across the country.
I think we're realizing that we have to wake up. We can't sit back anymore and say, well, my life is pretty decent. I'm just going to be quiet about it. While we turn on the news every night and seeing our black brothers and sisters being harassed, killed, treated like crap. It's just awful because, I mean, it's them today and it's my kid tomorrow.
Right.
You know, it's me the next day. I mean, all of us have to, you know, we're living in fear.
Right. Well,
and we need to, and we always want to prop the Jews up. A Jew wouldn't send their children to be taught by a Nazi. We brag about sending our kids to Grand Cranbrook, West Bloomfield. You see how the young boy got harassed out in West Bloomfield. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. You can't go to your oppressor to be your savior. We need to start teaching our babies because even outside of the math and sciences, their educational system is not good for us. We get a quality education by default. Oh, if we toss our little black babies in the classroom with us, we'll get some too. We need to teach our kids.
Right, right. Absolutely. Well, at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, they have a Freedom School. Visit theright.org, theright.org, W-R-I-G-H-T.
Could you give us some details about that Freedom School?
I'm not involved in it. I've heard a little bit about it. So
well, I'm going to find out more about it.
Go to that website to get information.
We need that. We need the churches. We need to look at this. This is urgency.
Right. Well, let me talk about some ways people are actually fighting back across the country.
Okay. Well, Bruce, you have made some excellent points. Keep listening. Keep calling. We try to bring you a lot of good information. Usually I don't have shows that are volatile like this. I don't like to get all worked up between 9 and 11. Otherwise, I'm up till 4 in the morning. But I think that, we all need a wake-up call. I need a wake-up call. I've been on edge for the last couple of weeks just watching the news and taking some time out to think, like, what is this? How's this affecting me? How's it affecting? And I talk to my friends, and everybody's been a little off kilter because we're like, are you feeling this too? Are you feeling this? We're all feeling like something's getting ready to happen, and it ain't good. It doesn't feel good right now.
Something's right around the corner. Huh?
Yeah, it's like, you're looking over your shoulder. There's a funny smell in the air.
Right.
And his name is Trump.
Right, right. Well, like I said before the break, I warned people about Trump. Trump is the poster boy for white privilege because only a wealthy white male, a perceived wealthy white male, could be this ignorant and become the first Russian president of the United States. But if we look at some documented evidence of people fighting back, and people can copy this across the country, okay? First of all, if we look at why Bill O'Reilly on Fox News is not on the air anymore. The O'Reilly Factor. This was the #1 rated cable news program for 11 years.
Can I tell you something about? I don't want to break your chain of thought. When you say Bill O'Reilly, ooh, I get really upset. I worked with Bill O'Reilly in Boston.
Right.
I was there first before he came. He was a newspaper reporter.
Okay.
They hired Bill O'Reilly because he was a very popular right-wing, print journalist. And there were 3 or 4 of us, black reporters in the newsroom. And every morning when he would walk in and make his grand entrance, because he thought he was all of that, and everybody, hey, Bill, hi, we'd say, he never spoke to any of the black people. He did not talk to us.
Right.
And this is a million years ago, okay?
Right.
This is back in, the end of the 70s and early 80s. He did not, the 80s, he didn't talk to us.
Right.
And so every morning when he'd come in and walk past my cubicle, I said, hey, Bill, good morning, how you doing? And I'd do it on purpose so that everybody around could hear me speak to him, and he wouldn't even turn his head. No, so he didn't just become like that when he got to be a big shot at CNN.
Well, he's a white supremacist.
Yes,
he's
he
a white.
is.
Now let's deal
Yes,
with why. Let's deal with why Bill O'Reilly is not on the air anymore. Okay, people want to talk about what can you do. It's because organizations, African American organizations like Color of Change, colorchange.org, they had a campaign to put pressure on advertisers of Bill O'Reilly's show.
Yes.
They got about 325,000 online signatures. They contacted dozens of Bill O'Reilly's advertisers. And 80 advertisers, 80 white corporations pulled their advertising dollars from Bill O'Reilly's show. And then and then they redistributed the pain. Okay? Read the article from Huffington Post, Black Voices, HuffingtonPost.com, Black Voices. This black org, O-R-G, this black org helped oust Bill O'Reilly by hitting Fox where it hurts. And this documents what Color Change did. And they worked with other organizations. And it got to the point where his show was no longer profitable, okay, for Fox News, and they fired him. This was after the New York Times exposed that Bill O'Reilly and Fox News paid $13 million to 5 women who alleged sexual harassment. Okay,
what was he making a year?
That ran Fox News. The
Say
founder
again?
of Fox News. I mean,
he
was thrown out.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
it was a trickle effect.
Exactly. He was thrown out. He was a good friend of Donald Trump, okay? And Bill O'Reilly was a good friend of Donald Trump as well. I forgot how many millions of dollars.
And Bill O'Reilly was making how much a year at that point?
I forgot exactly how much.
Like 13 million,
something like that, or maybe even more.
Huge money.
I think it's even more than that. But people need to read that because see, this deals with redistributing the pain. And if you listen to Dr. King's last speech, April 3rd, 1968, I've been to the mountaintop. Don't just listen to the last 2 minutes that they show you on the television every Dr. King day. Listen to the full. It's about 43, 45 minutes. Okay, because Dr. King left a blueprint and he talked about. He told them to go out and boycott Wonder Bread and Heart's Bread and Coca-Cola and Seal Test Milk. And he said that we have to always anchor our external direct action with the power of economic withdrawal. He said we have to always, he said this in the speech is on YouTube. He said we have to always anchor our external direct action with the power of economic withdrawal. Before the break, you talked about marching. What he's saying is that when you have marches and mass protests, you also have to have targeted, sustained economic withdrawal programs, economic boycotts, to put pressure on your target so that you can then push your agenda.
A march all by itself does not accomplish much.
It wears out your shoes. You may get some exercise.
There was a march this week in Detroit, the 4 People's March. 23 people got arrested. They said they were disrupting the queue line. I don't know what came out of the march.
Right. Well. This is about that deals with gentrification and protecting Detroit for white gentrifiers. That's what that's about. If we look at understanding how to leverage your dollars, your history and culture gives you your values, your interests, and your principles, your VIPs. It influences your economic empowerment and political empowerment. We have to understand we have to stop financing our own dehumanization. Many people are invested in privatized prisons right now and don't know it. It's through your 401k plan and it's through your pension fund plan. I'm not against 401k plans. I'm not against pension fund plans.
We don't always know what they do with your money.
Well, you can call your benefits manager and find out. Okay, if we look at what happened in June of 2017 in the city of New York, we saw that city employees in the city of New York, not just African Americans, but city employees in the city of New York, found out they were investing in privatized prisons. Core Civic, which is the largest owner-operator of privatized prisons, used to be Corrections Corporation of America. They are publicly traded stock, New York Stock Exchange, the symbol CXW. You can follow them. And also Geo Group, which used to be Wackenhut. These people withdrew $48 million of their pension fund dollars from these 2 privatized prisons. Because they said, you may have privatized prisons, but you're not going to do it with our money. They redistributed the pain.
And who did that withdrawal?
These was the city employees of the city of New York. They withdrew $48 million.
Through their 401k plans.
No, pension fund. $48 million of the pension fund. Read this article from New York Daily News. NYC pension fund to back out of investments in private prisons. When you research this, you find that this is something they actually did. NYC pension fund to back out of investments in private prisons. And on Politics Nation on MSNBC, Reverend Al Sharpton interviewed one of the guys who was central to making this happen. So these are examples of people redistributing the pain and fighting back. We have to understand we have to stop financing our own dehumanization. Also, many people are invested in gun manufacturers and don't know it as well through their pension fund plans and through their 401k plans. You can call your benefits manager at your job and find out where your dollars are invested. We saw the teachers in California back in 2012 who found out that they had millions of dollars invested in 3 gun manufacturers. We saw they withdrew money.
Yeah, Mr.
Yes.
Imhotep, I would imagine many people weren't even aware that they could call someone who's a benefits manager.
Exactly. Benefits manager. And the other thing we have to do, and Reverend Al Sharpton is talking about this on his show, Keeping It Real, which is here on 9:10 a.m., Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. He talked to an African-American union, if I remember correctly, and they had 114 financial managers that handle their money, their stock plans, things like this. Out of 114 financial managers, only 1 was black. The union's like 80% black. He said, wait a second. He said, this is your money. He said, you can determine who handles your money. Because one of the things he's saying is like when we have these jobs that we work at and we have 401k plans and pension fund plans, we need to have more black financial managers that handle the money, that invest the money. Okay? This is redistributing the pain. All right? So we have to understand this. If we look at also, it's not just where we spend our dollars, which is important, is where we invest our dollars, but also the TV shows we watch. So in 2014, you had the TV show on VH1 called Sorority Sisters, okay? And Sorority Sisters was a very degrading show, and many African-American sororities started negatively picking them, right? So what happened? Why isn't that show on the air anymore? Because African-American organizations put pressure on 19 advertisers.
I signed the position.
And these advertisers withdrew economic support because we leveraged our dollars and we redistributed the pain because we realized we can't finance our own dehumanization. We need to do the same thing and have economic withdrawal of corporations that put out negative corporate hip-hop, that degrade us and call us N-words and B's and everything on a daily basis. So then when we try to get our issues addressed, we are dehumanized because the images that are projected by white corporations dehumanize us on a daily basis, and these dehumanized images are exported around the world.
I'd like to comment on that.
Go ahead.
He said exported around the world. I want the audience to realize something.
And this is Sturge Moreland speaking.
1979, you know I'm a singer, right? I had started traveling to sing. And the first time I went outside the country was to Australia and New Zealand. And I was there for 3 weeks, singing with a 50-piece choir and a 50-piece orchestra. And I was one of 12 blacks from Detroit that went with the group. And you may or may not be aware that Australia at the time had something called the white policy. It was very similar to apartheid. And the Aboriginals there were the people who were the targets, right?
Right.
So when I got there, I was partnered with 5 different white families to stay at their house. I was the only person in the book that didn't have a photo. I didn't make it to the photo shoot. So the white families that met me, the first white family that met me at the airport were the Dreesens, and they didn't know what I looked like. So when I came down the escalator, I saw my sign. They had a sign that said Sturge, and I walked up to someone named Sturge, and they said, "Yo, Sturge," you know, they had this accent, right? And they said, "Oh, we," I said, "You what?" we didn't see your picture. I said, "And," you know. And so, anyways, I went to their house.
They're a little surprised, right?
Right, they're real surprised. So what I found out while I was there is that as we sang from place to place and got on ferries and sang here and there and at malls, that white folks quite often were very hostile towards the black people in the choir as we were performing at malls and so forth. And I only saw Aboriginals from time to time who were in the city, and they were always put on the outskirts. And a couple of families explained to me that they had particular, very specific notions about people of color, and particularly black people. Right. And the Dreesens, the first night I stayed at their house, we were having dinner, and they were very upfront people. And I really did respect that about them. They told me just how they felt and why and so forth. And they said that they had really negative impressions of black people. And I asked them, did they know any black people? They said, no, we don't know any black people. I said, well, why do you have negative impressions of black people? And they said, well, we only can go by what the news tells us. And that's
what they see.
That's right. And it's what you see and what you
right.
what you consume.
Right. Exactly.
And so they're consuming what's called news, you know, from the tell lie vision, as Mr. Imhotep said.
Right.
And so I asked them, well, what do you think about me? He said, well, you seem to be a nice
You're
fellow.
a nice guy.
You seem to be a nice fellow, you know. I said, would it occur to you that there are many other nice fellas and women like me? He said, yeah, well, that makes sense. And I remember the mother, Miss Dreesen, saying that, you know, Sturge, we really can't help it. You know, I said, you know, Miss Dreesen, you really can help it. And the reason I bring this up is that I've been a number of places around the world. This is chronic. This is global.
White supremacy is a global system.
White supremacy is everywhere.
Yes.
And wherever I've been, I've run into it. And people don't have to know. You know, they can see me walking down the street in Germany. They can see me in Switzerland. They can see. It doesn't matter where they see me walking down the street. Somebody has to say something. You know. And I took my wife and kids to. I sang in Wales, England, last year, and the opportunity was such that I could bring them. This is the first time I brought my family with me. I was singing. So we're walking down the street. And
Sharon.
Yeah. No. He's.
Oh, got a break. I'm so into your story. Just remember that you were walking down the street in Wales, okay? Your English trip. We will be right back with Michael Imhotep and Sturge Moreland talking about racism in the world and in America.
All right, we'll be back.